Hello everyone and welcome to Creature Clash, a podcast where we talk about everything from D&D to SCP and everything in between. My name's Alex.
I'm Dawn.
And I'm Adam.
And today we're going to be talking a little bit about what the deal with certain magical creatures are and why they feel the need to mess with people and torture them and the like. But let's kick things off a little less heavy. And Adam, you recently started a new D&D game with everyone. How do you think that's going so far?
Oh, I think it's going good so far. Nobody died on session 1, so that's good.
We almost died on session 1.
A number of you, but I mean, it's level 1. You have to, I guess, just be smart about things, and, well, nobody died, so that's good.
That is good. I just, when you throw around necrotic damage, I think everybody in the party was like, ah, dang it. It's got this sort of association where if you get knocked down with a necrotic, you just insta-die.
Yeah, I mean, that effect can be on some necrotic stuff, but in this instance, it was not there, so I do get the worry, but I assure you that nobody was going to immediately die if they went to 0.
Do you want to share what creature it was that was fighting?
Yeah. For anybody that has the Mordecai Tomes of Foes, the Skulk was our first major creature that was introduced that was sneaking around inside of a town and killing, or has killed an individual, and there was a number of them hiding in the sewers that the party had to go and eliminate. So, and they're also naturally invisible, so it was quite interesting for level 1 players to have to deal with, including one that's never played before, so I think it was good fun.
It was definitely more exciting than just fighting goblins in a tavern.
Yeah, and that's something I've definitely have done before, so I try to change it up a little bit for each session 1 for those like first level 1 encounters, so just so things don't seem redundant, especially with repeating players, but I'm sure at some point goblins may return.
I mean, I don't mind killing goblins. I just like, I did this too, pretty much, in my first campaign that I did. I'm pretty sure I had us fighting goblins as well. Goblins and town guards, so it can be a little difficult to try and think outside the box, especially for a level 1 game when you're just starting out.
Right.
Because in the monster manual, it feels like all the monsters are either too strong or too weak for your beginning party most of the time. That's just my opinion, though, just thumbing through the monster manual.
Yeah, it's like you don't want your level 1 party having to kill challenge rating 0 stuff, because that XP, if you play by XP that is, would just rack up so slowly, so you really gotta find that nice balance, and I don't think I necessarily found that nice balance, because the rolls were bad on my end for damage at least, but it was a nice challenge, I think.
It was a nice challenge. Was there, like, supposed to be some sort of easier way that we were supposed to go about it? Because we just kind of jumped into it. Was there supposed to be an item that we needed to get before we went in there, or were you just hoping that we would gun-ho it?
Without giving away too much more detail, because they may resurface, there was a higher DC for a history check that wasn't met for another way of going about it.
Well, maybe next time we'll have a better idea of what to do. So, should we jump on into the question at hand? What is the deal with magical creatures trying just to mess with people? So, let's start with my least favorite magical creature, leprechauns. Why do they care if we have their gold?
Because it's theirs.
But yeah, it's their gold, sure, but they're not using it for anything. There's no leprechaun economy that they're spending their gold on. They just hoard it and hide it, and then when somebody finds it, they're like, oh, well, no, I don't agree with that whole finders keepers rule. It's like there's no point in a leprechaun keeping its gold.
Don't dragons do the same thing?
Dragons earn that gold, first of all. And they don't go around leaving it in random places for people to find and then be like, nope, not yours, taking it back.
Maybe the gold that the leprechaun has is a little bit more darker. Maybe like the leprechaun's life is sort of tethered to this gold. So if a single gold piece leaves that pot of gold, that's it. So maybe that's why they care.
Well, I know in the horror movie, I'm sorry, not horror movie, the educational documentary series, The Leprechaun. Occasionally, the gold has the chance to give the user an increased chance of good luck if they have a piece of the leprechaun's gold. And I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think that sometimes, in certain lore, the life force of a leprechaun is actually tied to its gold, which would partially explain it.
Guess I had a lucky guess.
I mean, it's a pretty good guess, and honestly, it's pretty fair to say. If we're going by the Disney movie, a leprechaun that loses its gold starts to look more and more like the leprechaun when they're living among humans. But let's not use Disney lore for this.
Maybe if, like, you take a piece of gold and you have luck from that piece of gold, maybe the gold is leprechaun's luck, and it's like, almost like, a karma stat or something. Like, if you have less luck, then bad things happen.
That would be cool. I don't think D&D doesn't really have a luck stack, though, does it?
No.
No, not really. I mean, they have lucky feats, but not necessarily a luck stat.
But that could explain why the leprechaun doesn't want you to take its gold. Then it would become unlucky the more gold it loses.
Then why doesn't the leprechaun hide its gold somewhere that nobody can find it? Why does it keep its gold out in the open, like, all the time? People just stumble upon it constantly, and they're like, nope, you can't have it.
I don't know.
It's like, who does that benefit?
Well, isn't it still impossible for a leprechaun to hide its gold since a rainbow always leads to it?
I mean, have you ever felt the urge to go to the end of a rainbow, Adam? Have you ever felt the need to make that drive, that trek?
As a child, absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, you were confined to your house by your parents. They're like, no, you can't just run out into the middle of the street and go chase down a rainbow. Plus, nobody knows what end of the rainbow you're supposed to be looking at. A rainbow has two ends, guys.
I mean, that is true.
I'm not sure what you're trying to argue by stating this.
What I'm saying is that even if the rainbow leads you to the leprechaun's gold, one, I don't know how many people would make the trek to follow the rainbow, considering that by the time you actually reached the end of the rainbow, it would have completely disappeared by that point. And two, you have no idea which end of the rainbow you're supposed to be going to. There are two ends to every rainbow.
Okay, but if a rainbow actually had the possibility of leading you to a pot of gold, I think people would actually go and try to find the end of the rainbow. Because your argument is that leprechauns are dumb because people in the real world wouldn't go to the end of a rainbow, but if leprechauns were real and pots of gold were at the end of a rainbow, then people in the real world would do that.
Don, this is Creature Clash. Are you telling me that you don't believe in leprechauns? Please answer honestly.
I do not believe in leprechauns.
Ladies and gentlemen of Creature Clash, I am so sorry that we had this non-believer on our podcast. I had no idea Don was such a skeptic, didn't believe in leprechauns. Get out of this podcast, Don. This is for people who really believe in leprechauns, alright?
Can't have a critic.
Sure we can. I mean, it's a fair point. But also, at the same time, I feel like at this point, nobody believes that leprechauns are real. So, I'm just saying that a leprechaun has the pot of gold, right? But they don't hide it well enough. I mean, even if the rainbow led to the pot of gold, and if you traveled all the way to the end of the rainbow to where the pot of gold was supposed to be, it's always like on a tree stump or hidden under a rock. It's never like 50,000 feet underground where you would need an excavator to dig it up. Or, it's never like inside of a stone or a boulder where you would have to have a pickaxe in order to excavate it. It's always like right out in the open. And I'm just saying, leprechauns are supposed to be magical creatures, so I would think that they would have more creative ways to hide their gold, but they never do.
Maybe it has to be accessible for them.
But if that's the case, then okay. So it kind of comes, alright, so it comes back to me for this. If you could live forever, let's say you were immortal, but your immortality was tied to, cauldron full of quarters, and you couldn't be too far from the cauldron, and you couldn't let any piece of the cauldron out, and you had to be in this close proximity to do it, what would be the point of that kind of immortality? Because you couldn't do anything or go anywhere. So if we're saying that it's a matter of proximity or accessibility, then I would rather not be immortal than have to deal with that all the time.
I'm not saying I disagree with you, I'm just trying to explain it.
Adam, you want to weigh in on any of this?
Sounds like being a leprechaun sucks.
Exactly. It does suck to be a leprechaun because you're probably one of the most useless magical creatures to exist if you can't even go 200 miles without your pot of gold near you. What if a leprechaun kept their gold in a bank and used their credit card as their proximity towards their gold? Because technically they would always have access to it. So that's the real question. Is it possible to enchant your gold to a credit card so that you're always having it? Or what if you smelted down all the gold in the pot into like a chain or a bracelet or something? That would make more sense.
Well, the gold's magic.
Yeah, but just because something's magic doesn't mean it can't be melted down. I mean, unless we're going under the pretense that the coins are weatherproof and so they can't be damaged in any way, shape, or form.
I don't know, I'm just trying to think like how in D&D, for example, when you have magical items, they're immune to a lot of things, like gelatinous cube, for example, will damage non-magical items. But if you do damage a magical item, you can't, like, mending, for example, won't restore the magic qualities if that's damaged. So it makes me think that, like, the magic is fragile if something is able to damage it.
Maybe being a leprechaun is more like a curse than anything else.
Maybe.
Maybe leprechauns were gnomes that were too greedy or something like that, and were cursed of forever being greedy little creatures that are just doomed to live forever trying to protect their pot of gold. Adding some new leprechaun lore out into the world right now.
What would a modern day leprechaun be? Like, instead of like a pot of gold, what would it be today?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
Bitcoin. I have me pot of Bitcoin right here. Sir, that is just a credit card with, or a thumb drive that's been heavily encoded. It's me pot of Bitcoin.
Gold is still really valuable.
For now, until we move on to the Bitcoin. I guess that the banker would probably be a modern day leprechaun, because they could hide their own wealth with the bank vault, and then they would be near it all the time. They'd be able to make their own money and socialize with people without having to worry about somebody trying to steal from them specifically.
So you're saying what's the best job for a leprechaun? Banker?
I guess, yeah, I guess. Adam's question was, what would a modern day leprechaun be? And I guess my answer would be, if anything, they would disguise themselves as bankers. Because then they could always be near their goal without having to worry about people trying to take it.
Fair point.
So, moving on from leprechauns to everyone's favorite topic. Genies. What the heck is with genies, bruh?
Well, I've said this before. I think that them messing with people isn't necessarily just them being malicious. It's them getting something out of it.
Okay, but if, like, I wished to never go hungry, and then the genie made my stomach really small, and so that a single grape would be all that I was able to eat every, like, 3 or 4 hours or so, how does that benefit the genie?
I would just say that's a chaotic evil genie. I don't know.
I'm just saying, genies are crafty, sneaky people. And sure, sometimes somebody will wish for something that could also benefit the genie in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of the times, especially in lore and just folk stories, it feels like genies just do whatever they want because it makes them happy. And it's like, hey, I didn't unearth you from 1,000-year slumber just for you to get your rocks off, you know? Just to get your jollies on. I want some gosh darn lightning hands without any of the repercussions.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's because, like, not all genies are in lamps. You know what I mean? Like, they live in the plane of air, if we're talking about D&D. Maybe genies that are enslaved in lamps are put there as, like, a trap because they're bad. You know what I mean? Like, maybe some past D&D party came along and trapped them. So maybe
I
that's
see.
why that they have that reputation. Like mostly the bad ones are trapped.
So you think that there's some kind of like council of genies that they're like, all right, prisoner number 845 has been accused of crimes against the multiverse. You are now sentenced to live out the rest of your days on the material world of Earth, never to be released. And he's like, curses. Well, at least every couple of millennia I'll get to mess with someone.
Yeah, maybe. Or just like not even necessarily other genies. I mean, take Aladdin, for example. That's how they dealt with Jafar, was trapping him in a lamp because that was the best way to deal with him. Or at least the best way they could think of at the time. So maybe there's like situations like that.
Like throughout history, people have dealt with such evil people, like dictators and whatnot, that they were like, the only way to deal with them without killing them directly is just to entrap them in this magical land.
Maybe. But specifically genies. I mean, like, I kind of read up on their lore when I made my Aarakocra, because I was reading up on stuff in the plane of air, and they are just, like, generally greedy. So they're, like, greedy and one of them's evil, then I can see why it'd get trapped by someone.
Do you think that there can be a half leprechaun, half genie?
If there can be a half dragon, half person, I don't see why not.
The ultimate greedy creature, a leprechaun / genie? Adam, what do you think?
Well, while you guys were having that conversation, I looked up like just standard genie lore, and it's interesting that in the Islamic context, they refer to them as jinn, and they're more, I guess, comparable to devils and demons. Perhaps it's just the, I don't know, like misfortune side, torturous side of Islamic context.
So you're saying that, like, maybe it's not necessarily genies that are bad, but the specific sect of genies called jinn?
Yeah.
I mean, that is possible. I mean, you know, there are all kinds of different branches of magical creatures to go off of, so I guess generalizing it to be all genies would be wrong, but definitely all jinn are just genies.
I mean, I guess that's fair. Like, even dragons, not all dragons are bad, but pretty much all red dragons are.
Because they shoot their disgusting mucus, or as Dylan likes to call it, pheromones, over their gold, so they know where it is ultimately.
I'm pretty sure that was a group discussion. That was not my idea.
I'm the one who suggested mucus, and then you turned it into pheromones. And cleaned it up a little bit, I guess. This is what happens when I edit all these podcasts. I'm just listening to everything we say, so I have the most up-to-date knowledge on what we last talked about, I guess.
Oh my gosh, when I go to upload them to YouTube and make a description, I have to like ask Adam what we talked about, and neither of us remember.
You just ask me. I remember. I could always write you a little description in the emails I send.
Oh, that'd be
just
helpful.
copy and paste it. Yeah, I'll do that from now on. Just
Okay.
write down on the time. So the last creature that I want to bring up is probably not one that many people think of, but it's been on my mind for a bit. Fairies. They always try to get humans to eat their food so that they're stuck constantly eating the food that the fairies give them. What's the point?
I'm unfamiliar with this lore.
So, basically, it's kind of like, it's kind of not just fairies, but like fae creatures in general. Sometimes try to trick you into eating the food that they provide you. And then if you eat the food that they give you, you can only eat the food that they give you from now on. Because any other food that you try to eat, will just turn to ash, or it won't sustain you or fill you or anything.
Well, going into this not knowing anything about the lore, maybe they get something out of it. So if you can only eat their food, then you owe them if they give you things. You know what I mean? Like they'll be like, "Oh, I'll give you more food if."
So like you become their puppet, basically.
Yeah, like that you basically get enslaved to them if they're the only one that can feed you.
Such a messed up practice to have, though. Like, what if I'm just like, man, I could really go for like a strawberry or something, and a fairy comes over and is like, tee, I'll give you a strawberry so that you may continue on your adventure. And you're like, oh, thank you so much. This is delicious. Ah, you foolish mortal. You are now under my command. Go and kill all the kings in the land. It's like, bro, I just wanted a strawberry. Give me a break. I'm not even physically fit enough to do all that. Gave a strawberry to the wrong person.
What a story.
It could happen.
And see, this is maybe this was like medieval's like time or okay, so like let me just collect my thoughts. Hold on, I'm gonna hit this up.
It's okay, Adam. Take your time.
So fairies originated from an older time period.
Mhm.
So what if this was their version of telling kids not to take candy from a stranger in an unmarked van? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like, now, Christoph, don't go taking schnitzel from Mr. Gribberhusen, because we don't know what he makes them out of. Just like how you shouldn't take food from a fairy, don't take food from your neighbor.
I mean, that makes sense. There's been some pretty effed up stories to get kids not to do things, so.
That's fair enough, that's true. I'm curious though, because I mean, obviously, people were kidnapped. I feel like kidnapping's been a part of human history since forever. But, nowadays, it's unfortunate to say that it's probably a lot easier because, kids want sweets and stuff like that. There's a lot of materialistic things that you can tempt people with, in order to trick them. But in older times, I would imagine it'd be a lot harder because how are you going to convince people to go with you anywhere? It's like, you can't, like, what would be the equivalent of offering somebody something? Like, I have this oxen in my cart that's all yours if you follow me. It's like, oh man, my farm really needs an oxen. Well, gee, mister, I don't really think that's big enough to fit an oxen in there.
I don't know. I mean, people are naturally greedy. We always want something.
That's true, especially kids. Which isn't a dig at anyone who's got like a child. It's just true. Kids want things more than
Yeah.
adults do because they don't have any concept of money or commerce or anything. So
Yeah. Yeah, kids are greedy.
and that's a good point, Adam. I never considered it to be sort of a cautionary tale for young kids to listen to.
And maybe perhaps that's like what all these magical creature stories are cautionary tales.
Like a leprechaun's cautionary tale is don't rob people?
Or don't give handouts.
Don't give handouts.
That sounds
That's like
bad, but
That's like a rich person's cautionary tale.
Oh my goodness.
Now listen here, Maximilian. I know that you've heard about this charity thing, but let me tell you a little story about the man and the leprechaun. It wouldn't surprise me if the rich had these kind of messed up cautionary tales for their own kids. Now that would be a best-selling book. I would read that if it was just like, just cautionary tales to tell your spoiled rich kids. And like all the stories hinged on not giving money to anyone, hoarding it all, investing, stuff like that.
Well, we do have that kind of thing in society though. Like, the whole thing where you hear stories about, or people tell you stories about like, people asking for money on the side of the road, but they actually, are a manager at Burger King and don't actually need the money. They just dress up like that in their backyard. I mean, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
People like to tell those.
I feel weird about that though, because I feel like, cause where I work, I see at least 2 homeless people, always on the corners of the street. So I feel like they're probably not lying, but it makes you wonder how many times people drive past them and are like, they're probably scam artists.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying though, is like, we have those cautionary tales. You're saying in a joking way, the rich have cautionary tales to tell their kids to be greedy, but we do have those. Even not being rich, like, we have that thought when we see someone on the side of the road that they could be lying.
Very true. Unfortunately.
Or at least that's, what a lot of people probably tell themselves.
I mean, I probably wouldn't give. My rule of thumb is, I feel if you see the same person in the same spot for like a month, then I would say odds are they're in need of some kind of compensation. And if not, if it turns out that they're lying to you, I mean, at least you have a good enough conscience where you're like, well, I gave money to someone who I thought was in need, and if that makes me a foolish person, then so be it.
Yeah, I know. I haven't given money to anybody, but Adam and I did buy someone food once. that was asking for food specifically.
Yeah, I remember that. That was at a Wendy's or something like that.
Yeah. And there's no way of knowing that they needed it or not, but
I mean,
just the
that's still
fact that
pretty nice.
the fact that they were asking for food and not money made me more willing.
Yeah, like, because they were being more specific about what they needed.
Yeah.
If I remember
Don-
correctly, he had a job application, so it's not like he was in between work.
Yeah.
Don, I need a PS5.
That's a massive 180.
You do not need a PS5. People need food. They don't
Okay.
need PlayStations.
Says you. How am I supposed to play Demon Souls Remastered if I don't have a PS5, Don? I need it because it's a cultural experience.
I think you'll be okay.
Probably.
Besides, you make more money than I do. I don't make any money right now.
No comment.
Alex, I need a PS5.
Don, you'll have an Xbox One and you'll like it.
I do have an Xbox One.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you guys think of any more magical creatures that mess with people? Have like their weird little lessons tied to it?
Green dragons. Still bitter.
Do green dragons just lie to you about stuff? I guess they do.
I mean, they have sharp tongues, and they're inherently greedy, as most chromatic dragons are, so it's just manipulation. That's all they are.
I feel like mermaids kind of lie to people, but I feel like after they drown them, they eat them, so that's like another food source for them.
That one makes sense to you then.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's not like they're being like, ooh, come over to us and we'll like, make you king of the world or whatever. It's basically just well-known fact that, you know, if you ever follow a mermaid, they'll just drown you and eat you or something. As opposed to leprechauns, which give you the illusion of you could possibly become rich, or genies, where it's the illusion of getting all your wishes, or fairies, where it's the illusion of just getting the basic need of food, but then being roped into something more dangerous.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Mhm.
Green dragons are kind of the same as they manipulate to get something out of it, so it's pretty obvious why.
Well, I think this is a good spot to end today's podcast. I hope you all enjoyed listening. I'm Alex.
I'm Dawn.
And I'm Adam.
And remember, kids, don't take fruit from strange magical creatures. We'll hear you all next time. So long.